how they feel. Okay, sorry. We're trying to find out what are the best things you can do to help yourself. So there's no blame. We know that you can live a life like this, a woman in the middle exercising every day, lots of fruit and veg, and still get cancer. And you can be a bit like me on the right there, eating pizzas and smoking cigars, and they're fine. And a lot of disease is genetic. It's just the genes we're born with, and it's to be honest, it's just unlucky. But there is a trend for lifestyle factors to cause cancer. I mean, we know this. This is data from Cancer Research UK, which says about 50% of cancers are probably lifestyle and nutrition related, and the others are just bad luck. And it's not just breast cancer and the hormone related cancers for obesity, for example. Esophagus cancer is linked to higher rate of obesity. And the problem is, in our society, these factors are increasing very significantly. This is a graph looking at the incidence of high blood pressure. Diabetes has almost doubled in the last 20 years, and it's looking like it's going to double still. So there's an epidemic of diabetes. We know that the number of people who are overweight or obese is increasing dramatically as well. So this trend is not reversing. And the problem is I think that most people have a bit of information overload. It's not that you don't know what to do and what you've been told. It's many people have just been told too much, and with conflicting information. And that leads to sort of leaning over the garden fence and getting really quite incorrect advice at times from neighbours, or metaphorically neighbours on the internet. So what we are doing in the Primrose unit, linked to Bedford University and universities around the country, is trying to look at the scientific evidence, ask patients what would be suitable for them. There's no point telling someone to stand on one leg on the top of a mountain for 4 hours. It's not going to happen. So, it's what is acceptable for patients, what they're willing to change, and ultimately to develop randomized trial, which is the ultimate way of getting the evidence. And then with that evidence, we can tell our patients in the Primrose unit, we can publish it in medical journals so doctors can follow our advice. And we broadcast in various places. We advise lots of the charities on what should be in their information booklets. We also run a blog. So if someone says, should I be taking high dose vitamin C, or should I be on cannabis? Should I be fasting? We can write an evidence review and people can read it in their own time. And of course, as the introduction said, every couple of years I write a new book, and the latest is How to Live. And we put all that data into hopefully a readable and sort of semi-entertaining format, which people can follow in a reasonable way. But what we're doing is not new. Stephen Paget, one of the forefathers of medicine 2 centuries ago, in his summary of his work said, which was published in The Lancet, said, we should be looking at the soil as well as the seed when it comes to medical research. We should, every gardener knows you can have the best seeds in the world, but if you plant it in a bad soil, which is our bodies, it's not going to grow. And we want the opposite. We want the cancers not to grow, and we want to make our soil, our bodies, not receptive for cancer cells. So what are the things we mainly concentrate on in our research? Well, obesity, gut health, chronic inflammation, sugar intake, exercise, and what we call polyphenol-rich foods, which are all to do with improving the well-being of patients, how they feel, reducing the side effects of cancer treatments, ranging from high blood pressure, cardiac abnormalities, peripheral neuropathy, and ultimately trying to slow cancer progression and stop it relapsing, or if you haven't got cancer, stop it forming in the first place. So I can't really talk about every one of these factors in 40 minutes, and I can be happy to come back and do another talk looking at other things. So I'll just concentrate on a few probably more important ones, perhaps, although everything's important. So let's start with vitamin D. A lot of you have heard about vitamin D in the press recently, and it's becoming a lot more trendy, for want of a better word. We know that vitamin D helps. If you have low vitamin D, you're more likely to get rickets, osteoporosis, bone disorders, and that's what people tend to talk about. But we know that if you're vitamin D deficient, you're more likely to get flu. You're more likely to put on weight. You're more likely to get diabetes, heart disease, memory loss, dementia. So it's much more important than just the bones. And also vitamin D now is linked very strongly to cancer. If anyone's interested in the data, there's lots of data now from very large studies published in really reputable journals. So if you're vitamin D deficient after cancer, you're more likely to relapse. There's one study showing that if you're on chemotherapy for cancer, you have a lower response rate. And even things like prostate cancer, there's the rate of progression on people who are being watched is higher if you're vitamin D deficient. There's no direct studies for esophagus, but these are pretty close, bowel cancer, etc. So I'm sure the data applies to esophagus as well. So how do we increase our vitamin D levels? Well, it comes from sunshine, of course. If you look out the window now, I don't think I'll see much sunshine. And even if there is a bit of sunshine, you can't really walk around in your boxer shorts today. But in the sunny days, it's good to get out in the sun, expose as much flesh as you can. If you've got a garden, try to do that once or twice a day, and that will keep your levels high. We know that it's in some foods like sun-dried mushrooms, or you can take a supplement. And I suspect most of us should take a supplement from about now till about April. And there's lots and lots of different types. The best supplements have vitamin D mixed with a probiotic, because vitamin D helps the probiotic gut formation, and in turn, the probiotics help the absorption of healthy vitamin D. So it's not about you can go to the Superdrug or whatever and get these really high concentration vitamin D. It's about what you take it with. So this is one we would recommend. It's called Your Gut Plus, and it's got vitamin D mixed with a probiotic, and that will sort you out. So let's go on to sugar. Well, we all like all this sort of stuff, don't we? I mean, I do, unfortunately. Not so much the sweets now, but certainly a nice cake. But the trouble is with sugary foods is particularly on an empty stomach. So first thing in the morning or halfway through the morning, you get this nice peak in the sugar, which gives you that sort of nice hit, and you feel a bit better, don't you, about an hour afterwards. But then the sugar levels drop, and you start getting a bit hungry again an hour and a half later. And that causes you to want to eat more. So overall, your calories go up, and you gain weight. But also that period there leads to fatigue, and it's not good for fatigue levels. And this peak here triggers high insulin levels, and insulin actually drives cancer cells. It also drives inflammation in the body. So this is actually carcinogenic, this area here. Whereas if you have slow release carbohydrates such as brown rice, sourdough bread made with spelt, things like that, or even fat, you don't get this peak and trough. So again, this is summarizing the harm. It causes insulin resistance, it causes chronic inflammation, weight gain, and actually processed sugar feeds the unhealthy bacteria in our gut. So it leads to Helicobacter, an unhealthy pathogenic gut, bacterial formation. And there's lots of diseases now linked to high sugar intake, including high cholesterol. So actually, the things which put your cholesterol up is mainly sugar, not fat. Heart disease, dementia, cancer. And there's lots and lots of studies if you want to read them, or you can just read the 2 chapters in my book, which summarizes it as well. So there's no doubt that processed sugar should be avoided where possible. And I'm not talking about a little bit of a cake or a dessert after your lunch. I'm talking between meals, particularly first thing in the morning, last thing at night, where it has the biggest impact. Now you might say, well, I like fruit. Well, I'm not talking about fruit. Fruit has some sugar, about 14%, as opposed to, say, honey, which has 80%. But the polyphenols, the thing which give fruit its color and taste and smell, they actually slow the transport of sugar through the gut wall. So they reduce the thing called the glycemic index. They reduce the negative impact of sugar. So fruit is perfect. Carry on eating as much fruit as you can. Just be a little bit careful when you put it in a smoothie or something, because you can sort of break it down a bit too much and the sugar's absorbed a bit quickly. But what do we do in the Primrose unit when you come in? I don't know if any of you have been in there. I'm sure this is the same in other centres. We advertise sugary products on the reception desk as you walk through the door, and even patients are given bags with sugar in as a treat. So we said, look, let's try to lead by example. This was one of the studies we did where we replaced biscuits and sweets with fruit and nuts, and we measured weight amongst staff and happiness on a happiness score. And it's not true that sugar makes you happy. Actually, fruit and veg made you happy. Happiness score went down, weight went down. And actually, when we asked the patients in the unit, I don't know if some of you were in the unit at that point, what they thought of it, 94% appreciated the gesture and said they're more likely to change their diet if they saw the staff leading by example. So this is something which really should be. We published this, and unfortunately the hospital wouldn't do a press release because they said it was too negative, even though they didn't read the results. So I'm not sure how we can broadcast that around the country, because there's a big campaign to support sugar. But anyway, I'm not a politician. If any of you got any ideas, I'd be very grateful to hear. So coming on to exercise, there's about 180 chemicals change in your body after exercise, most of them healthy. I've published 3 papers on this, including one fairly recently with these authors from around the world, looking at the biochemistry which happens. So we know that if you're outdoors, you'll put your vitamin D levels up, it'll help with weight loss. Exercise helps the healthy bacteria in your gut. It reduces improves insulin sensitivity, reduces insulin levels, but actually changes the genes we're born with. It's called epigenetics. It's not just if you have dodgy genes, you can't do anything about them. Exercise helps to suppress the dodgy genes and improve the healthy genes. And we know that if people exercise 3 hours a week, something which makes you a bit hot and sweaty, ambling around the park looking at the petunias is quite good to stop you getting a DVT. You don't get those chemicals hitting your body, your anti-cancer chemicals. So you've got to do something for you, and that's a very individual thing, which gets you a little bit hot and sweaty. So you've got to say, I'm going to do an exercise session now for half an hour or an hour, and I need to have a shower afterwards. That's the sort of level we're talking about. And people are often say during chemo, take it easy, don't exercise. That's complete nonsense. This was a study from New York which showed that people who did the most exercise during the chemo had their hemoglobin was protected, they had less peripheral neuropathy, less nausea, better mental state. So although it's hard, it's not easy, it is something to try and push as much as you can. Maybe not the day after chemo and things like that, but, as much as possible where you can. And initially you will feel worse, but then in the longer term, you feel better. Of course, you've got to be aware there are some risks. One of the oncologists in the Primrose unit decided to go for a run during lockdown. This isn't her. And she broke her arm and her nose on the first day. So you've got to prepare for exercise if you're not used to it. You do some strength exercises first, get some balance exercises before you go jogging down the street, because you can fall over and hurt yourself. And also you've got to be aware of what your goals of exercise are. If it's to reduce stress, then obviously yoga and Pilates and all that is good. If it's to reduce weight, then you've got to sort of work at it. You've got to do aerobic exercise. And if you want to reduce osteoporosis and strength, you've got to do squatting and weights and things like that. And that's why getting an exercise professional is a good investment. So just, get one coming to your house or going to the gym and ask for a qualified exercise professional would be money well spent. Coming on to what we call, we know that fruit and veg, I've just said, have lots of vitamins, minerals, fiber, which are all anti-cancer. But I'm very interested in these chemicals called phytochemicals or polyphenols, which is the largest group of phytochemicals. And they give these sort of things, the color, the taste, and the smell. I mean, Indian food, for example, is full of polyphenols because it's got, the taste, the chili, the turmeric, all those things have got very high quantities of polyphenols. And these have enormous health benefits, and they've been underestimated. There's lots of studies throughout the world showing that people who eat soya, drink tea, have broccoli. This is a study we did in the Primrose unit looking at tea and broccoli. You know, funny enough, both of those showed they reduced the incidence of getting cancer. There was a strawberry study recently showing people with Barrett's esophagus, established Barrett's esophagus, when they took dried strawberries over a 2-month period and they rebiopsied the Barrett's esophagus, they had a lower grade and it was less apparent. So, you know, you can reverse you know, at least precancerous conditions. And we know that after cancer, if you have these foods, you have a lower risk of relapse and a lower risk of progression. And there's lots of ways these chemicals work. They reduce chronic inflammation in your body. They again have this epigenetic expression where they help the genes we've been born with. They promote the healthy genes and suppress the unhealthy ones. They feed gut bacteria, so they improve gut health. I've already said they slow the sugar going down across the gut wall, so they help protect you from sugar. And they have direct anti-cancer properties. We know from lots of studies, they slow the proliferation of cancer cells. They help prevent the cancer cells spreading. And they help cells recognize, you know, where cancer cells that they should die when they ought to. It's called apoptosis. And they improve DNA repair when we have carcinogenic foods, and they help protect you against some carcinogenic foods. So, and people used to call them antioxidants. They're not antioxidant. There is an antioxidant pathway, but that's just one of many. And actually, they're not direct antioxidants like vitamin E or vitamin A. They just enhance the antioxidant pathway. And in fact, when we don't need the antioxidants, they help reduce the levels as well. So I would say they facilitate inflammation, they facilitate immunity, and they facilitate the antioxidant pathways rather than being direct antioxidants. Also relevant recently, we know that these sort of foods, pomegranate, turmeric, chamomile, citrus bioflavones, aloe veras, they've been shown to have direct antiviral properties. There's lots of studies of previous SARS. They show people who eat those foods are less likely to catch viral infections. When they do, they're milder and they get over them quicker and they don't spread to other people. You know, most of that data is from previous viral infections rather than the current one, but almost certainly it applies to COVID as well. And I'll tell you about a trial we're doing later. So how can we increase our polyphenols? You know, we could go to an Indian restaurant every day, which would be a good way of doing it, or we could cook with lots of herbs and spices. But, you know, every culture has some good and bad, you know, but you want to get the best from every culture. So, you know, you could eat lots of broccoli, which of course would be a bit boring after a while, but you could make sure you get broccoli with lots of purple and eat the heads. You can get younger versions. Sprouting vegetables have more polyphenols. Chocolate is packed full of polyphenols. If you use chocolate without sugar in it and maybe mix it with some strawberries, that's completely healthy with no sugar in, and the sweetness of the strawberry will counterbalance the bitterness of the chocolate. So you don't have to go and get a sweet, sugary bit of chocolate to enjoy it. You can make your own and have all the health benefits. Lots of beans. You can concentrate things in shots. You can put them in a liquidizer, but be careful with too much fruit in those. You need to have more vegetables than just a little bit of fruit. Or soup is a good way, as long as you don't boil it to smithereens. But also you can put it in a supplement. And supplements, I'm not saying would replace a diet, but they are a convenient way to, you know, boost your intake of these foods, especially in a British diet, which is a bit low in these polyphenols. I mean, we're better in Asian countries and Far East. But you know, if it's a well-made supplement, just with whole foods, which are freeze-dried and concentrated, and you can perhaps grate the seeds of the pomegranate where it has the highest polyphenols, it is a convenient way. You can keep them in the kitchen. You can take one with your breakfast and one with your lunch, and it just elevates the polyphenol levels throughout the day, and they last for 3 years, so they don't go off, so they're always going to be there. And we did a study, for example, in the Primrose unit, which was international, where we randomized a food supplement which had broccoli, green tea, turmeric, and pomegranate, which are the things which have particularly high polyphenol levels. And also they're from different fruits and veg. So actually there's a spectrum of polyphenols. And we showed even after 6 months, there was a significant difference in the rate of prostate cancer progression. Now, the committee which formed this study didn't design this just for prostate cancer, but prostate cancer was an easy one to study because these men weren't on any other treatment, so we could get the result quite quickly. And we believe that would apply to any cancer, but of course this study didn't prove that, but it did at least prove it in prostate. And it correlated with underlying disease as well, so it wasn't just a blood test effect. We are trying to go on and do similar studies with other cancers, but of course it's difficult with cancers where you need immediate treatment. But that might be a sort of thing you could use for Barrett's esophagus, for example. That would be one of the things we'd be trying to aim to do. It's not just about cancer progression, though. We know that many people after cancer, particularly after sort of breast and prostate, almost certainly after esophagus as well, are left with aches and pains, joint pains, weight gain, menopausal type symptoms if you had it before menopause. And this was a study we published in Australia a couple of years ago showing people that suffer a lot of long-term side effects even if they're in the remission. And this supplement was actually little known to us, was used in a study in Tokyo because it's made in Switzerland now by a Swiss drug company. And it showed it significantly improved mood, hot flushes, and joint pains. And there's various reasons for that. We know that those foods also help with joint discomfort. They help improve cartilage regeneration. So they're not just painkillers, they improve the health of the joint. And if you've got healthier joints, you're more likely to exercise, etc. We know that these phytochemicals exist in other things like essential oils. If you have an essential oil, it smells lovely, doesn't it? That smell you can smell is the phytochemicals. And this was another study we did in relation with Coventry University, where they formulated a balm which had only extra virgin olive oil, shea butter, all sort of cold press, etc. But the active ingredients were leleshwa, which is African sage, lavender, which have antimicrobial and antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. And this is a side effect of taxotere chemotherapy, which I think is given in esophagus sometimes. And we just randomized people to have it or to use it on their nails before and during chemotherapy or not. And lo and behold, we more or less eliminated this side effect, which affects about 40% of people on chemotherapy around the world. And it's a simple, natural substance which is easily available. Unfortunately, because they're basically from foods, you can't prescribe them, although in the Primrose unit we buy them out of the research fund and give them free to patients, but around the country people have to buy them themselves. So coming on to gut health, I've mentioned it a few times. If you have poor gut health, you're more likely to get indigestion and intermittent diarrhea and constipation, and just not feel very satisfied. But it's not just about how you feel. If you have chronic gut health, it leads to inflammation in the lining of the cells of your gut. And if you have inflammation, you reduce the amount of things called Peyer's patches, which make the immune cells. About 60% of the immunity comes from the gut. And when you have poor gut health, these immune patches shrink and you don't get the healthy immune cells to protect us from infections and things. It also opens up gaps between the cells, which leaks nutrients out of your body. So it leaks the minerals and vitamins out of your body, and the toxins in the food, which normally are kept out, leak into your body. And these toxins coming into your body sets up an immune reaction against them. And that's if they're pathogens, that's good. But if they're just toxins, which normally would have just gone through your body, that increased immune reaction leads to chronic inflammation. So your body is constantly thinking it's being attacked by things. So it's although inflammation, if you cut yourself, is good, we don't want chronic inflammation every day of our lives because it drains our immune surveillance and it taxes our immunity. So overall, we then get a low immune surveillance. So we're more likely to get an infection, or cancer, because immunity protects you from cancer as well. And this chronic inflammation, these inflammatory markers, through a quirk of nature, actually drive cancer cells. As well as driving inflammation against infection, they have the same pathways. They tell cancer cells to grow faster. So we don't want excess inflammation in our body. And there's lots of things leading. We know years and years of research has told us if people are living with chronic inflammation, they're more likely to get food intolerance, inflammatory bowel disease, bloating, bowel cancer, esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, and also in the rest of your body, things like arthritis, diabetes, and all these other things, and dementia. There's a thing called a gut-brain pathway, which just put your hand up. Has anyone heard of the gut-brain pathway? Yeah, thought so. Yeah, it's quite well known now that if you have a poor gut, and you know, from time to time we all have it. I mean, I discovered I had a mild gluten intolerance a few years ago, and if I were to have a load of bread, a few hours later, I'd have to go to bed. I was really tired and certainly not running on all 4 cylinders. So we all have experienced this probably when we not have good guts, that we're just not feeling well in ourselves. But over time, not only does that lead to sort of fatigue, it leads to increased risk of dementia, Parkinson's disease, etc. So, you know, it's not good for your rest of your brain. We also know that many of the drugs we use in oncology now are immune, the immune drugs or immunotherapy. And what these immunotherapy type drugs do is they recruit the immune system to recognize the cancer as foreign and try and attack it. So if we have a poorer immunity or excess chronic inflammation, these immune therapies don't work as well. And we know that that's been published now. There's about a 40% difference in response rate if you don't have good gut health. And that's a big difference in these drugs. This is a nice case where it's melanoma, but I'm sure it could apply with other cancers, where a woman was given these really good immune drugs, immune modulators, and she had severe toxicity. She ended up in intensive care and lots of diarrhea, pulmonary fibrosis. They had to stop the treatment, and even though she only had it for a couple of weeks, it already had some response, but she had to stop. Now, after a few months, she said, look, I want to try again. And on her own back, she said, right, I'm not going to just take this like the doctor told me to. I'm going to do what you guys are doing, is trying to help myself. She did some research and she improved her gut health. She cut out sugar, exercised, took probiotics, did all the things you're supposed to do. She took them, she had no toxicity, and she had an excellent response, and she's alive and well 3 years later. The question you might ask is, why wasn't that done before she was on intensive care for 6 weeks? And there's a thing called prehabilitation now, which we're trying to do. Certainly in my practice, I would tell anyone going on to these drugs to take time off, just do 4 weeks of intensive gut promoting activities, and your gut's pretty forgiving. You can change quite quickly before going on to them. But also, we know about the gut-brain pathway, but there's a gut-lung pathway, which is very well established. We know that if you have better gut health, you're less likely to have asthma, you're less likely to catch viral infections. And if you do get a viral infection, you're less likely to get the severe form of it called ARDS, Adult Respiratory Distress Syndrome. And we know that people who have these really bad lungs after viral infections or COVID or toxicity from these immunotherapies, you find gut bacteria in the lungs, which is setting up an inflammation, which leads to this. So this could happen after flu, after COVID, or it could happen after some oncology drugs, but it's all related to excess inflammation in the lungs. So, you know, that you could, and there's a lot of evidence now, for example, people who go on to have pulmonary toxicity from these drugs, if they have poor gut health, they're less likely to have it. If you have COVID and you have poor gut health, you're more likely to have this. So it's very fundamental. So how do we improve our gut health? We eat lots of prebiotics. Now, these are things which feed healthy bacteria, such as mushrooms, broccoli, turmeric, and these are your prebiotic polyphenols. And there's the fermentable soluble fibers, beans, pomegranate, all things where when you first start taking them, you will feel more bloated and gassy, but after a while that disappears as the profile of the bacteria changes. You then don't get it. And many gastroenterologists say to patients, oh, you need to reduce, you've got indigestion, you need to reduce these. And they refer to a thing called FODMAP. FODMAP's just a short-term fix. It'll reduce your gas for a couple of weeks, but in the long term, it reduces gut health. So you've got to sort of persevere, have lots of those, and then you'll have good gut health. Obviously, exercise, cutting out burnt meat, smoking, sugar as well, but also increase the amount of bacteria. We're not very good at having bacteria in Britain. Again, other cultures are better. Sauerkraut is fermented cabbage. Kimchi in the Far East is lovely if you can get it fresh. It fizzes when you open the tin because of all the bacteria. Things like nattu, although nattu doesn't taste very nice. Or is there a role for probiotic supplements? I mean, if you go to Boots and things, you see thousands of them. There is a role. There is evidence that, well, I'll start again. If you have good gut health and you feel, you eat a very good diet and there's nothing else wrong with you, there's no evidence that taking a probiotic will improve you. However, if you've taken antibiotics, if you've been on chemotherapy, radiotherapy, non-steroidals, if you're traveling, going into hospital, if you've had recent alcohol or a recent viral infection, there's strong evidence that taking a good quality probiotic will help you. And I've already mentioned it helps the absorption of vitamin D as well. So it's a good idea to combine it. This is just showing there's lots of studies that giving probiotics to school children and things have a lower risk of colds and flu. And this was a study recently published to show it's called an app study. They looked at 500,000 people at the start of COVID, and they asked them if they got symptoms or not and looked at their diet. And they recently published that people who took vitamin D and probiotics had a lower risk of catching COVID. And I'm sure the same applies to other diseases. So there's evidence coming through. And I just want to quickly, briefly talk about one of the studies we've done recently. It's not about cancer, but it is about diet, where we looked at all the evidence I've just talked about and said, well, let's see if we, because we had to stop our cancer research and there was lots of COVID patients around. So we worked with the government and designed a supplement which had probiotics, vitamin D, and these polyphenol-rich foods. Thanks to Captain Tom, some of his money from his legacy will help to fund the study, and there was various other people who helped us. And basically, we worked with a whole load of organizations to say what probiotic is the safest, what's more likely to improve gut health. And it was mainly the lactobacillus, although it sounds like it's from milk, there's no milk in it. Reasonable concentration, prebiotic built in, and obviously a delayed release capsule so it gets into the large bowel. And we gave that, and the other thing we developed with various people is a polyphenol rich supplement, a bit like the poppy tea, this time called Phyto-V, and it had these sort of things. I won't go into the background for this, it will take too long, but these are the things from the previous SARS epidemic which had the best antiviral properties. And we basically did a double-blind randomized trial. So if you came in with COVID, you were randomized to have these or not. And we've finished recruiting now, and there was a highly significant difference in outcomes between the two groups. So that was the first study in the world to show that you could intervene with a food supplement in COVID and reduce the impact of it. And that's going to be published in the next few weeks. Hopefully, I'm busy writing that up at the moment. And I won't go through the data, but we looked at mainly cough, fatigue, and overall well-being, and there was improvements in all. The people who did the best were people who had GI symptoms with their COVID, not surprisingly, because you're giving an intervention to improve gut health. And this is a study we're about to start, where if you all get invited for your third booster vaccine, which you will be, I hope, we know from previous studies that if you exercise before the vaccination, so go for a walk or do some weights just before you get vaccinated, not so much the day after, because you're a bit tired and things, but the day before, if you make sure your vitamin D levels are up to scratch and you take some probiotics, that will enhance the antibody titers. We know that from the flu vaccine. We don't quite know it from the COVID vaccine, and that's why we're doing a study measuring COVID titers after people have been given 6 weeks of the Your Gut Plus probiotic and advised to exercise. So we know it's proven for the flu vaccine. We're trying to prove it for the COVID vaccine, which we think it is. In the meantime, good idea to do those things. So anyway, I don't know how long I talked for. Let's have a look. Oh, well, not too bad. So if you want more information, this is the website cancernet.uk. There's on the first page, there's 20 lifestyle tips to fight cancer, most of which I'm sure you know, but you could have a run through those, see if there's anything you're not familiar with, including avoiding carcinogens, which I haven't mentioned. This website, keephealthy.com, has information about the Your Gut Plus and POMIT, etc. There's the blog, so there might be some interesting stuff like, you know, is coffee good or bad for you, that sort of thing. And the trial I've mentioned about the COVID, this is the website. And of course, if you want to buy my book, you're very welcome, and it's all over on the Amazon, etc. So good. So over to you, and I'd be pleased to you know, have the rotten eggs thrown at me or whatever you want to do, or ask some nice questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Thomas. Can you stop sharing the screen then so we can see you properly?
Stop sharing, yeah. Well, I'm not sure that's a bonus. There we are.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Thomas. Every time I listen to you, I learn something new. And yes, this has become my Bible. And I do thank my very good friend Jill for gifting this to me. So I really encourage you have it even as a reference book. But we've had a number of questions, and Asha, are you there? Have you collated any of the questions from people?
Okay, it's me and Pip. We're going to do it together. Hi, I'm Asha. This is
Hello.
Pip, my husband. Hello, Dr. Thomas. Thank you for a wonderful. Wow, what an insight. So we do have some questions for you, and thank you for your time. So
that's all right.
Okay. Question 1 was from Jill, and she wanted to ask, can I ask Rob if he rates this broccoli-related supplement? Trade name is Avamacol, if I said that right. AVMACOL.
Okay. Well, when we started the POMIT trial, we took 18 months as a committee. It was a government committee called the National Cancer Research Network. And we tried to go through all the available supplements on the market. So it was an onerous task. We were meeting every month. So there's lots available. Just to summarize, the ones we discounted quickly were ones with vitamin A and vitamin E in. So I would not take a vitamin A and vitamin E supplement because they're direct antioxidant and probably harmful. And there's data to show that. So take them as foods, but not there. So in terms of whole food supplements, like this broccoli one, that we did include broccoli in the POMIT. And so, yes, we did another study to show broccoli is very healthy and it reduces the incidence of cancer. So yes, definitely broccoli is good, but it only contains one type of polyphenol, one group of polyphenols. And what works best is that, you know, I can't go into it in a slide now, but some polyphenols work by a direct anti-inflammatory. Others work by improving oxidation. Others work by direct anti-proliferation. So what you need to do is have food groups which attack each part of the cancer pathway. So taking just a supplement with broccoli will only do one part of that pathway. So you're better off having a supplement with, you know, with multiple different healthy foods, provided you haven't got one in there which is unhealthy, of course. And of course, the other thing is it's not been tested in a randomized trial. The POMIT study was the only randomized trial at that point which showed a benefit. Okay, that benefit was prostate cancer, not esophageal, but at least it showed a benefit. And the other thing, it didn't show any harm. We don't know, you know, if you take very high doses of one particular type, or even too much turmeric or too much broccoli, you could go over the threshold and start, you know, being too antioxidant or too. So what we looked at is lower doses of more different things rather than higher doses of one. So I don't know, because there hasn't been a study of that broccoli supplement, but intuitively, I would go for one which has a mix of things rather than just a single food.
Thank you, Professor. Jill has also asked, to avoid sugar, what's your view on artificial sweeteners, and do they cause inflammation in a similar way?
Well, if you had to have sweetness, it is probably better to have an artificial sweetener. However, and very disappointingly to the manufacturer of artificial, when the large studies were looking at people who had artificial sweeteners and did they have a lower risk of, say, diabetes or heart disease, there wasn't really a massive advantage. You'd think there would be, because they don't put up sugars as much in your bloodstream. And the reason is they tend to damage healthy gut cells, the artificial sweeteners, for some unknown reason. So they do also have risks, and we know that they can affect gut health. So, you know, in one way they're better, in other way they're not. So you're better off, I'm afraid, trying to avoid sugar and even artificial sweeteners completely. And your taste buds do adapt. You know, after a while, you don't have this craving. But it's also the hidden sugars. Like patients often say, I have granola for breakfast. You know, granola is full of sugar. Dried fruit is full of sugar. So try to cut out sugar completely. Look at the packet. Even sort of cornflakes and things have sugar. You know, so you've got to really look at the label. I'm not talking about, and if you want it, just have a bit after your lunch, or a little bit of a cake or a sweet, when it's not, the impact is less.
Thank you. Another question from me, very quickly. How good is Alpro yogurt as a probiotic?
Well, you got Jacobs and things used to have made from concentrated milk, and there may be some issues there, and lots of sugar in them. So any benefit of the lactobacillus in that was completely obliterated by the sugar. So there's no benefit at all. And they were live yogurts. You know, any live yogurt is good. Not too much because it's got lots of milk, but yeah, so kefir, live yogurts you make yourself, always a good idea in smaller quantities. Maybe you have half a cup a day or something like that. So I would recommend that. But to really boost your intake, I would actually advise, especially after cancer, is maybe not every day, but most days, a capsule, with very concentrated bacteria. And all it is like concentrating a yogurt, but without the milk. So.
Thank you. I think that might have answered Devi Ben's question, which says, is homemade yogurt good for cancer people or not? Well,
I think so, yes. I think it's good for everybody if you've made it with a culture. So, anything with cultures, fermented foods, kefir, sauerkraut, as long as it's not pasteurized, your own yogurt. But try to diversify it. Yogurt only has one strain of lactobacillus, of course, and we need more different strains. And as I said, a supplement will have 5 or 6 or even 10 different strains in it. So yeah, yogurt, but mix it with other things as well. Don't overdo it because it can be quite fatty. And if you're struggling with weight, people can put on a bit of weight. And if you've got a bit of a lactose intolerance, which we tend to as we get older, although there's less lactose in yogurt compared to milk because it's been fermented, it still has some. So just be a little bit careful.
Thank you. Jill, I will come back to you in one moment. I just wanted to press a question from Mira. She said, thank you so much for an informative lecture. Do you have any tips on how to get everything you recommended in your daily diet? I find myself getting bogged down with meal planning and then worrying about not eating enough, X, Y, Z. Yeah, I think me too. So that's
well, you don't want to be frightened of food. We don't want to convert everyone into being paranoid. So yeah, it's also preparing your kitchen. I mean, I discovered a few years ago that I was having cereals with sugar in. I was getting tired halfway through the morning. So you have to go out, and when you shop, you've got to sort of often be a bit more imaginative. You can get, for example, Rice Krispies without sugar in, but you have to order them from special sites on the internet and from Waitrose and things. So you have to prepare your kitchen. So you have sugar-free cereals, lots of nuts. Nuts are fantastic. So you have to go to the corner shop and buy big bags of peanuts and almonds and things, which are quite expensive. And once they're in your kitchen, then, it's easier to prepare the food, isn't it? And don't go out and buy sugary cereals or granola. So it's a case of slowly changing things. Lots of beans, dried beans last for ages in the kitchen. So just get into a habit of having lots of those. But again, you know, don't be paranoid. Every meal cannot be healthy. You know, it's not about having every meal has to be perfect. You know, you can relax at times. It's just about the overall quantity of food. So just, you know, just get in a habit of always buying fruit, always buying vegetables, always buying beans, always buying nuts, and then the unhealthy things on top of that and afterwards.
I agree. Thank you. Jill would like to, so Gillian would like to ask, my nails are still bad 4 months after stopping chemotherapy. With Polybalm will still help, and where can I buy it? I think I did see
yeah, no, I don't think I had a link for that. Where was that person? Sorry, I didn't catch the name. Where were they treated?
Gillian, sorry, where was you treated? It doesn't actually say.
Yeah.
Addenbrooke's.
Ah, yeah, because if you were in Bedford, you would have been given the Polybalm free.
Yeah, nobody mentioned Polybalm, and my nails are still really sore, and my toenails are actually falling off. So
Yeah.
Wondering if it's too late to do anything, or if
no, because it does
might
help. You know, the nurses use it to improve their nails anyway, because it improves everybody's nails as soon as you use it. People use it for split nails or fungus. So it will, you know, it will help, and it will moisturize the nail bed so the new nails grow back more healthily. But of course, it has to grow out, and it might take another 3 months. But at least the nails which start growing out are going to be healthy when you start using it. Yeah, it's a shame because it didn't work for everyone, but it was about 80–90% of people had no nail damage at all when they would have previously had it. So I work in Addenbrooke's twice a week, and they do know the data, but you know.
I think it's been difficult because of COVID, so my consultations have been telephone rather than real life. So
yeah.
But can I buy it from the chemist or
no, well, I'd say we don't we do the trials, but we don't do anything to do with but they do have a website called polybalm.co.uk, I think, or polybalm.com. I can't remember. So polybalm.com, I think it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's going to be word of mouth, because this is a small company who make it. They provide it to us. They don't have a big marketing budget. The profit margin is very small, even though it seems expensive. But you know, we try to tell as many people as possible, and you know, it's just I don't know. People don't seem to prioritize it. But when you ask patients what are the worst part of chemotherapy, it comes out quite high.
Because and my toenails have been really painful, and that's actually stopping me exercising. You know,
Absolutely.
That's stopping me walking. So it's not just for nails; it's a knock-on effect to my general health. So I will Google that. Thank you.
No, that's a very good point. It's not just a cosmetic thing.
Yeah, no, the cosmetic. It's been painful. It's been waking me up at night, even, because it's been sort of like stabbing pains in my toenails.
Yeah.
And as I said, walking seems to make it worse, so I'm not walking as much.
Oh.
And walking has been my saviour during chemotherapy. So we'll try and get sorted. Thank you.
Well, maybe the next time you go to Addenbrooke's for follow-up, you can mention.
I will mention it to the nurses.
Yeah, good.
Okay, thank you, Gillian. My next question is from someone unknown, so I don't have a name. I'm still confused between pre and probiotics. Please shed light. Also, are we able to buy the pomegranate supplements?
Yeah, I mean, we have thousands of different types of bacteria in our gut, and you know, trillions of them. Apparently, we've got more foreign bacteria than we have our own foreign genetic material than our own genetic material in our body. So it's not just a case of taking the bacteria, which is in yogurt and kimchi and fermented foods. It's actually giving the bacteria the food they need to so that the healthy bacteria grow more, and those are called prebiotics. So prebiotics work in a number of different ways. They provide the nutrients for the bacteria to grow. They also, some of them contain some antibiotics which kill the unhealthy bacteria, particularly things like mushrooms. So they're basically just a fertilizer for the healthy bacteria, but not the unhealthy bacteria. And that's why they're called prebiotics. And they're just as important, if not probably more important, than the actual bacteria themselves. And as I said, those are the things in mushrooms, beans, any polyphenol-rich foods. And my view is they're probably more important, because if you provide the right soil, the right bacteria will just grow by themselves. The pommy tea, yes, that's made again by a Swiss drug company called Helsinn, and it's all over the internet. There's multiple. The official UK website is pommytea.co.uk. So it's pommy-tea.uk. If you want to read the data, it's all on there.
Thank you. I have one from Bimla. I use stevia instead of sugar. Is this okay? I think you'd already spoken about this.
It's better than sugar, but it still has some issues. So you're better off in the long term trying to reduce it. But it's a good start.
Okay. Another question from Unknown. Problems post bowel cancer surgery, 320, and stoma reversal, 1120. Going to the loo can be many trips one day or constipated another. Any tips? Also, which probiotic capsules recommended? I think you'd mentioned that as well. But
obviously, if you've had bowel cancer surgery and if you've got a stoma, you're on a bit of a losing wicket in terms of symptoms. So, it's probably never going to be perfect. But, concentrating on gut health is a very good start, because if you don't have inflammation in your gut, you're more likely to have regular bowels, and it's going to feel more comfortable. I'm a big fan of crushed flax seeds. So if you have just a sprinkle every morning, you have to be careful, because if you overdo it, especially if you had a stoma, you could suddenly, get too much stool. So instead of taking a laxative, for example, if you're constipated, I would take, say, a crushed flax seeds. Again, if you've got a stoma, that would be exactly the situation for taking a probiotic. And the probiotic, we looked at, for the Phyto-V study, we looked at lots of different probiotics. There was experts from Coventry and Nottingham, and the ones, there are thousands on the market, and some have 20 different types of bacteria. The ones we found which were the safest were just the lactobacillus with a bit of inulin, which is made from chicory. And that's why we opted for the Your Gut Plus, and that's the one we chose. And then they supplied us free for the study, of course. So obviously they're going to get something out of it as well, but that's the way funding works these days. So that's the one I take when I go abroad, and if I'm not feeling 100%, and I know it's safe, which is also very important.
Okay, thank you. Another question from PKMS63. Is homemade soya yogurt good?
I think so, yeah. Is it made, well, if it's made from bacteria, yeah. I'm not sure if soya yogurt's made with lactobacillus, but it sounds like it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Another one from Unknown is neuropathy, more numbness around the balls of feet and toes, and also fingers, because I've got the same.
Yeah.
Remains in feet. Capox chemo ended 720. Any ideas, please?
Yes, it's one of the things we've been trying to look at. There was various things like increasing your magnesium levels in chocolate and stuff, and there was a trend at one stage of injecting patients with magnesium to see if we reduced it, but that turned out to be not particularly significant. There's only one lifestyle study which showed a difference, where people were put into a very intensive exercise regime. Really pushing the exercise against none, and there was an improvement in peripheral neuropathy. But the trouble is, once the damage is done, nerves take a long time to heal, You know, it's a very slow process. So the only thing which has been shown definitely is intense exercise, you know, really pushing yourself. The other study was using topical chili oil. Or, you know, if you're clever enough, you can get your chili and sort of mash it up and mix it with some oil and put that on. But you can buy chili oil with creams with chili in. I'm not, and there's a very good randomized trial showing it improved peripheral neuropathy. I'm not convinced it actually improved the underlying nerve damage, or it just sort of distracted from the discomfort, but you can certainly try that. So either make your own chili balm, or you just go on Google and ask and look for chili oil. Just be careful, some are quite chili balms, just chili creams. Some can be quite strong, so be careful you don't sort of put it on your hands and then put your finger in your eye or anything like that, because that's, but it's worth a try.
Thank you. That's good to know as well. And I agree with the fact of pushing yourself with the exercise, which is what I've been doing as well. And it is improving, not fully functional, but
yeah,
the improvement and the progress that I've made. Thank you. Dave has a question. What is your opinion around honey versus refined sugar in diet?
Well, honey is certainly better than refined sugar. It has lots of polyphenols in, and it's you know, it's a natural product. The trouble is with honey, it's also got, you know, 80–90% sugar. So if you could take the natural things out, the polyphenols out of honey and just took those, that would be the best. And you know, I've got mixed feelings about honey. Certainly, if you had it on your cereals in the morning or on your porridge, I wouldn't recommend it, because you've got that, you're going to get that insulin surge even with honey. Okay. However, honey's got other healthy properties. So what I say, if you like honey, you know, have it as part of your dessert for lunch, for example, because the impact of the sugar is less if you've already got a stomach full of food. So, you know, I'd love to say honey's healthy because it's intuitive, you'd like to think so, but the sugar content mitigates a lot of the health benefits of honey. Thank
you. Smita has asked, and she said, thank you for a very informative webinar. Smita, I'm sure that there is going to be a link to the recording so you can share it with your friends and family. So don't worry, I will get Daksha onto that for you. Thank you. Louise, my mum has bone cancer. Exercise was her lifestyle, but now the staff at the gym are hesitant to let her take part. Any ideas of what not to do further harm?
Well, she could change your gym, because the evidence is if you have metastatic cancer, you should exercise. It helps strengthen the bones. And as you know, if you've got cancer in the bones, around the metastases, the bone can weaken, and you're more likely to get fracture, etc., and pain. So exercise is highly recommended for people with bony metastases. But of course, there's some certain red flags. Now, if your gym instructor's been qualified as in cancer rehabilitation, he or she would know these red flags. So what she could do is find a gym instructor who's had a cancer qualification. There's a level 4 qualification. And you know, things like if you start getting nerve root pains going down your leg, or banding, or severe pain, of course you need to avoid it. And you can do light weights, squatting, light weights. It's very important to keep your strength up. We know that a higher muscle to fat ratio, so you can be overweight and have more muscles, and that's healthy. You can be thin and have hardly any muscles, and that's unhealthy as well. So you want to increase the ratio of muscles to fat, and that you only get that with doing some strength exercises in the gym. So yeah, of course, you don't just bench press 100 pounds when you've got spinal metastases, but you can do light weights. And again, just tell her to get a level 4 exercise professional. There's plenty out there who've done the qualification.
Thank you. Okay, Rohinin and Minaxi, yes, they're saying thank you for a an informative talk, and for Daksha for organising it. There will be a recording. We'll try and get that so that other people, you can share it with other people. We'll try and get that on for you. Eddie has a question. Does vitamin B12 supplement pills help with peripheral neuropathy?
If you're deficient in vitamin B, you're more likely to get peripheral neuropathy. So it wouldn't, yeah, I mean, it's difficult because we don't measure vitamin B routinely. So it wouldn't do a harm to take some multivitamin Bs. The problem is there were a couple of trials from Sweden which showed that folic acid and vitamin B, actually, if you've got normal levels, encourage cancer growth. So, so I wouldn't take them long term for too long. Ideally, you could measure your vitamin B levels. You could ask your GP perhaps to say, would you mind measuring my thiamine and B12? And if you are deficient, then take the supplement. But if you're not deficient, don't take them. So that would be the best thing, but it's a little bit more proactive, isn't it? And, you know, concentrate on vitamin B rich food. So I don't know if you're a vegetarian or not. If you're a vegetarian, maybe, you know, some algae or things which contain vitamin B12, or even some vitamin B12 supplements. If you're not a vegetarian, then you should be okay. But you could smile nicely at your GP and see if they'll do the blood levels would be the answer to the question.
Thank you. Rohini, how about date sugar?
Well, it's all sugar when it's been processed, you know, coconut sugar, date sugar, is still sugar. You know, it's better because it's still got some of the polyphenols from the original source in it, but it's still sugar. You know, unfortunately, you're still going to get that peak. You're going to get that peak in insulin levels, which sets up the inflammation. So it's, you know, again, after a meal is best way to do it, but it's better than processed white sugar, but it's still got some harm, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. So a question from Daksha. Many patients ask about whether or not they are eligible to have immunotherapy. How is this decided in terms of overall health? Immunotherapy,
well, as an oncologist treating, you know, prostate, breast, a bit of bowel, you know, we're slowly moving over to immune therapies. Now, it's incredibly complicated because you have to look at the genetic profile of the tumor, and your oncologist should be on top of that. So the future is looking at, you know, profiling the tumor, looking for the genetic defect, and then targeting that genetic defect with the immune therapy. So I don't know, to be honest, the answer for esophagus. There will be some available, and they're changing every month. So, you know, to be an oncologist used to be quite a nice, relaxing job. Now it's you have to, every month it's changing. You have to be on top of the game all the time. So, but fortunately, we have good in the Cambridge network. We have a nice sort of group of committees who constantly updating us on the guidelines and things. So you just need to ask your oncologist what immune therapies are on the horizon, and, you know, could any apply to you? But they should be. That's part of the job, is to do that.
One last question before we hand it over back to Daksha. Vimla would like to know, sometimes I also use Indian jaggery instead of sugar. What is your view or advice on that?
Well, I mean, again, most, you know, Indian culture is not all parts of Indian food is good. You know, there's ghee and things, but a lot of it is, you know, I mean, that's you know, they even have a like a yogurt drink or something, which is full of, yeah. So, yeah, it's almost certainly better than sugar, but you got to just try to get rid of the urge to have sugar. I mean, I know it's a lovely thing, but, you know, and is that the stuff they put in these lovely sweet desserts? Yeah, well, they're pretty sweet, aren't they? Let's face it. They're you know, as a treat now and again, but they're not healthy.
So basically, everything in moderation. Dr. Professor Robert Thomas, thank you so much. You've taken 20 questions and you've answered them. I hope everybody has got the answers that they've wanted. I'm going to hand you over back to Daksha, and thank you for your time.
That's well, thank you. It's been interesting.
Thank you, Asha, for a marvelous job in collating all the questions. Really appreciated. Well, Professor Thomas, thank you so much. Are you happy to send me your slides, and can I share the recording with this group?
Yeah, I'll try to see. Yeah, I need to send them over on WeTransfer because they're quite high volume.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to say that thank you for offering to come to our group again, because I'm going to take you up on that in future. We are Bedfordshire Cancer Support Group. We meet on the first Saturday of every month at 11 o'clock. And anyone from the UK is welcome, because we are continuing online. So you all have my email address, daksha.trivedi@btconnect.com. I really would like to thank everyone. Before I pass it on to Eddie Thompson, he came to, and I know Eddie said he doesn't mind me sharing this, he came to us with inoperable cancer about 2 years ago, and he's amazing. He's doing amazingly well. And Eddie is the person who actually had a chat with our good professor here and was very instrumental in facilitating this session today. But before I pass it on to Eddie for a vote of thanks, this has become my Bible. And what I want to say is that it's not just for cancer patients. It says at the front here, the groundbreaking lifestyle guide to keep you healthy, fit, and free of illness. Your families will benefit, as my families are benefiting. So
thanks for the promo.
Well, it's the truth, you know. I refer to it a lot, and so does my mother, and so does my husband. Really appreciate all your help and support. If you do have any burning questions that you haven't had a chance to put over, please email them to me, and I will convey them to Professor Thomas, a very busy man, a very very absorbed and involved in not just oncology, but today you reached out to the patients and their families with all our questions, and we really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Professor Thomas. And Eddie, is Eddie there? Can I pause? Eddie, are you there still?
I'm here, Daksha.
Over to you.
Hi there. Hello, Robert. Thank you very much indeed for coming today. We're most grateful to you for such a comprehensive, all-embracing talk. My brain is still reeling from some of the scientific data. We've had a lot of it, but the way that you've emphasized the holistic approach to treating cancer, the way all things are interdependent, and you've gone into the diet side in great detail, and you mentioned exercise a few times, and general mindfulness and well-being. There's all these things we know are all interrelated, and we are most grateful to you for giving up your Saturday morning to come and talk to us and really teach us so much. I think we've all learned a lot, and thank you very much. And I very much look forward to seeing you again, if you do come back. And just thank you very much indeed. And,
well, thanks for listening. I mean, it's nice that you appreciate what you do. I'm sure most of you know what I said already, but it's nice to have it reinforced, isn't it?
I don't know, I didn't know so much of what you've said, because I think the other thing, Professor Thomas, is with cancer patients, whether they're survivors or having treatment and living with and beyond cancer, one thing that we all seeking is this level of trust and confidence, and every effort that we want to make to improve our lifestyle, because we know that if we keep ourselves well, we keep the cancer, away, or maybe recurrence and that sort of thing. So you've really reassured us, and you've also actually, I've got to rethink about the jaggery and the dates, because, when we are having chemotherapy and treatment, we're low in energy. When I had an esophagectomy, I was completely low in energy, and my mother would make me jaggery-based sweets to give me that energy booster. And I've continued to have them, and I'm thinking perhaps I need to rethink about, everything in moderation. And so you've given us that trust, confidence. We know your data is there, and we know your book is there. And I think it's like knowing that there is there, rather than everybody grappling with so many websites. Yeah. Cancer patients, once they're diagnosed, they're all over the place on all the websites. Yeah. And I think to have something put so lovely in this in all different aspects, including diet, nutrition, physical activity, stress management, and so on. It's a huge task that you've done, and we really appreciate it. And thank you very much indeed. And thank you to all the participants who also the audience who've come today and given up their time. And please feel free to email me with anything, and do join on the 6th of November. We've got an NHS practitioner coming to talk about art therapy for everyone. So please do join us. Thank you very much indeed.
Lovely. It's been a pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.